Good evening. I'm Erin Viner, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. In today's top story, Iran signed an agreement to ship most of its enriched uranium to Turkey in a nuclear fuel exchange deal that could ease international tensions over the country's disputed nuclear program. The agreement comes as Tehran faces the looming threat of tougher sanctions from the United Nations. Farah Kardelli has more in this report.
The deal was reached through 18 hours of direct negotiations in Tehran between Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, and Turkish Prime Minister Recep Erdogan. The plan, similar to the one drafted by the UN in October, requires Iran to ship to Turkey 1,200 kilograms of low-enriched uranium in exchange for fuel rods of medium-enriched uranium to use in a nuclear medical research reactor. Today's agreement, signed by foreign ministers of the three countries, comes at a time when world powers are in talks to impose a fourth round of UN sanctions on Iran if a resolution to the impasse isn't found. If implemented, the deal would deplete Iran's current stocks of enriched uranium that many fear it will use to proceed with nuclear weapons production. A final draft is expected to be signed tomorrow morning, and the exchange is set to take place in a month. However, there is still skepticism around the world today about Tehran's true intentions in signing the agreement. Iran has previously issued positive signals about possible nuclear deals, only to back off later in what are assumed to be diplomatic stalling tactics. The initial deal offered by the six world powers was rejected by Iran, even though it was virtually identical to the one signed today. The reason, or pretext offered by Iran, was the fear that under the initial UN deal, if a swap fell through, its uranium stock could be seized permanently. The new proposal introduced a clause stating that the uranium will be considered Iranian property until the fuel rods are delivered. If Iran does not receive the fuel rods from Turkey within a year, the Turkish government will be required to immediately and unconditionally return the uranium. Iran has also agreed to allow the exchange to take place in Turkey, contrary to its initial demand. While some observers see today's agreement as a step in the right direction, many continue to doubt Iran's credibility. One Israeli source told the AFP French news agency that Iran is manipulating Turkey and Brazil by pretending to accept the agreement. Other sources in Jerusalem said they are currently examining the outline of the new deal and will consider their response accordingly. For IBA News, Farah Kardelli.
Archaeologists today said that they have completed the task of removing the pagan bones from graves at the site of the new emergency room of Barzilai Medical Center in Ashkelon. The remains have been handed over to the Ministry of Religious Affairs. Archaeologists say that they have established beyond any doubt that the graves were not those of Jews. But controversy over the decision to relocate the human remains continues to rage and has now spread to Jerusalem. Overnight, City Hall cut off services to several ultra-Orthodox neighborhoods in the capital after hundreds of protesters clashed with police. Close to 700 Haredim took part in the demonstrations organized by an extreme ultra-Orthodox faction at Shabbat Square. Damage from the riots has been estimated to amount to 1 million shekels. A number of municipal sanitation workers were beaten by angry demonstrators, and youth staged riots along Bar Ilan Street and torched garbage cans. At least 30 protesters were detained by police forces. The relocation of the ancient remains discovered in Ashkelon is regarded by many of the ultra-Orthodox as sacrilege. The Supreme Court today ordered the Beit Yaakov Ultra-Orthodox Girls' School in the West Bank settlement of Emmanuel to merge its two courses of study in order to prevent the possibility of ethnic segregation. Earlier this month, the school, which has been separating students of Ashkenazi and Sephardi origins, was ordered to stop running divided classes for the girls in the same building. Instead of complying with the court ruling, Ashkenazi parents set up a pirate school with a privately run educational program. Parents said that it is their right to decide how to raise their children and questioned the court's authority in what they call private policies, which are not part of an independently run but state-funded school system that is backed by the Ashkenazi ultra-Orthodox leadership. Both the parents and the teachers claimed that the classes were not separated due to the students' different ethnic backgrounds, but rather stem from the girls' different levels of religious observance. The court also ordered the school to pay 10,000 shekels for each day it violates the ruling. And meanwhile, the ultra-Orthodox woman accused of starving and abusing her young son over a period of 5 years was convicted in the Jerusalem District Court today. The court approved the plea bargain deal signed by the defendant, exempting her from serving time in prison. In terms of the agreement, the woman will be separated from all of her children over the next 5 years. For the first 3 years, the unnamed woman will remain under house arrest at her mother's home, while her 4 oldest children will be placed in the custody of their father and permitted only supervised visits with their mother. The youngest child, who suffered the abuse, will be in the custody of his uncle for the next 9 months, at which time his status will be reassessed. Following 12 days of detention, Amir Mahfouz, the Israeli Arab suspected of having contacts with a foreign agent from Hezbollah, will be permitted to meet with his attorneys. Mahfouz's relatives and supporters gathered this morning outside the Petah Tikva court to protest his lack of proper legal representation. The prominent Arab figure has been prohibited from seeing his lawyers and family since his arrest. His defense team had threatened to boycott today's hearing on the extension of his remand if he was not going to be allowed to attend. Mahfouz was arrested along with Omar Saeed on charges of espionage. Their detention has sparked outrage among the Israeli Arab community, which claims that the men have been unfairly targeted. Controversy today over the denial of entry into Israel of leading Jewish American academic Noam Chomsky yesterday at the Allenby Bridge crossing from Jordan. The Interior Ministry said that the anti-Israel linguist is not on Israel's blacklist of banned persons and was barred from entering due to a coordination misunderstanding. The longtime critic of Israeli policies claimed, however, that Israeli officials led him to believe that the government does not like what he has to say and is aggravated by the fact that he has agreed to speak at Berzait University in Ramallah, to which he was en route. According to officials at the Ministry of the Interior, the ban may be reversed, and they are currently assessing the situation with the IDF's coordinator for government activities in the territories. Returning now to the agreement signed between Iran and Turkey this morning, aimed at resolving the standoff over Iran's disputed nuclear weapons program. Dr. Alon Liel, who served as Israel's charge d'affaires in Turkey, told IBA's Leah Zinder earlier that while he is not convinced that the agreement will in fact be implemented, it should in any case sound off warning bells in Washington.
The Iranians surprised us many times and had lots of ups and downs in their talks with the West and with the international energy organizations. So I think if it will be implemented and we'll see the enriched uranium in Turkey, 1,200 kilos, it will be a major achievement for Turkey.
And do you think it may happen even though an Israeli official reacted by saying that both Turkey and Brazil are being manipulated by Iran? They have absolutely no faith at all, apparently, that the agreement will be implemented.
Look, I'm not a big expert on nuclear energy, but it seems as if they managed to convince not only Turkey and Brazil, but also Russia and China. And I guess Russia and China have their experts, so I see it as a positive move. Although Israel will always scream and yell, and the United States will feel embarrassed, but again, first let's see it being implemented.
You say the United States will be embarrassed. Indeed, this is a blow to the Western powers and specifically to President Obama, is it not?
Sure, sure. I think it's a blow to American diplomacy. It's a blow to Israeli diplomacy that focused all its effort on the isolation of Iran. I think the Americans are making a big mistake by focusing on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict when everybody tells them they cannot achieve an agreement. And it's very risky for a superpower to put all its weight on talks that cannot end in an agreement, while other players relatively of minor importance like Turkey and Brazil are scoring points on the international arena. So I think the United States has to do a lot of thinking as a result. But I'm still cautious because if this will not be implemented, and the enriched uranium will not reach Turkey, or at least not the full amount, the Turks and the Brazilians will look as a joke. So it's a gambling here. When you sign an agreement with the devil, you have to be very cautious too. So I think it's not the end of the story. But again, if it will happen, it's of major importance.
And one more question on that issue, Dr. Liel. In fact, another negative development from Israel's point of view is that the tough, pro-Islamic, anti-Western, anti-Israel policy of Erdogan has now been strengthened, has it not?
Turkey has become a political enemy of Israel, still having economic relations and cultural relations.
And military ties, of course.
And remnants of military ties, but no political contact on the highest level. And Turkey being a more dominant player in the Middle East is not good news for Israel these days, especially when they have fantastic relations with Syria, and they strengthened their status in the Islamic Conference, in the Islamic world, in the Arab world. So I think it's not good news, at least for this government, who is hated in Ankara.
The IDF Home Front Command, along with the country's emergency rescue services, are currently gearing up for next week's countrywide drill, which will be the largest ever conducted in the nation's history. Security officials stress that the annual exercise has been months into planning and is unconnected to any particular event or rumors of tension along the northern border. The drill will include simulations of rocket attacks against Israeli population centers and will take place in 68 towns and villages, in some cases for more than one day. Over 70% of the nation's population will be involved as rescue workers practice the emergency mass distribution of gas masks. Government officials say that they are aware that the drill may trigger concern within Israel's neighboring states and have issued notifications to those they referred to as everyone who needs to know, stressing that the event is completely routine. Turning to Damascus, where Syrian Prime Minister Mohammed Najib al-Attari has vowed strong retaliation in the event of an attack by Israel. Speaking to the Tunisian Asabah newspaper, the Syrian leader went on to say that while no one wants war, Israel knows very well that Syria possesses every power component to counter an attack, and that Syria would fight down to its last soldier should a war be forced upon it. The Prime Minister also vehemently dismissed Israel's accusations that his nation is supplying the Hezbollah terror group in southern Lebanon with weaponry, including Scud missiles. In related news, the Minister of Industry, Trade and Labor, Benjamin Ben Eliezer, says that Israel is trying to lead a balanced policy and leave a door open in regard to the renewal of talks with Syria. Speaking during a meeting with the foreign press organized by the Israel Project, however, Ben Eliezer expressed concern over the tightening of relations between Damascus and Moscow.
We are trying to lead what we call a balanced policy. We want to keep the doors open with the Russians and as well as with the Americans. We think that a superpower such as Russia should understand and should read the situation and try to find the proper formula how to help those sides that can bring something new to the area. I mean, I would be very happy to see the Russia helping the Palestinian Authority. I would be more than happy to see Russian money and Russian companies investing in the West Bank. That's my feeling. So instead of that, I can't say it. Russia is a superpower and have their own thoughts. I don't know. To tell you that I'm happy about the fact that they are selling guns to the Syrians and trying to face Khalid Mashal. No, I'm not happy about that. I hope that I know that some of our guys are quite embarrassed about it, and we hope that at least their intention was a good one, because I understand that what have been released from this meeting is that Medvedev asked to release immediately Gilad Shalit. Now, if this will happen, well, I may say I understand, but to tell you where should be the weight, the political weight of Russia, this weight has to go in the favor the people who are living in the West Bank.
And joining me now in the studio is Likud member of Knesset, Danny Danon. Chaver Knesset Danon, you've come directly from a special session of the Likud faction, which was held at the Begin Center to commemorate the 33rd anniversary of the occasion that Likud began to head the government. Tell us about this occasion.
It was a special meeting. First of all, I called to all the audience to go and visit the Menachem Begin Heritage Center.
It's a remarkable center.
It is. I'm very proud that we have such a remarkable center. The Menachem Begin spirit was in the room, not only some Benny Begin and Dan Meridor who worked with him and many other ministers like Moshe Arens. It was an important meeting. And we tried to speak to the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, and we told him, let's take from Menachem Begin what he said to the Americans when they pushed him on the issue of Jerusalem.
Yes, and yet having said that, you are considered to be one of the rebels of the Likud party, and you have often criticized the Prime Minister, and yet it was Menachem Begin, in fact, who was the first Israeli Prime Minister to make peace with the Arab states.
I work very close with the Prime Minister, and on most issues we agree. But when I do not agree with him, I tell him directly. And on the issue of a Palestinian state, I think it was a mistake. And I think if we go to the reading and writing of Menachem Begin, what he said very precisely to Carter, there will not be a Palestinian state because it is a threat to Israel. And on the issue of Jerusalem, there is a magnificent story. When Carter pushed Menachem Begin to discuss Jerusalem, Prime Minister Begin told him, Mr. President, I am not allowed to discuss Jerusalem because it belongs to the Jewish people. I cannot discuss it with you. And then Carter realized that he cannot push Menachem Begin on that issue, and he left it aside. I think that what we need to say today to President Obama, we are not allowed to discuss Jerusalem with you. Take your hands off Jerusalem. Jerusalem will be the eternal capital. And I think today the Prime Minister, walking in the center, getting the spirit of Menachem Begin, we all, the members of Knesset and Minister, we felt the spirit of Menachem Begin.
Let's talk about another issue. There was a great deal of controversy from settlers today who are outraged about the expropriation of settler land for the construction of a new road that will link Ramallah with this newly constructed Palestinian city, Rawabi. What is your position on that?
I'm very worried from what I see coming from the Defense Ministry. I see Defense Minister Ehud Barak working to satisfy the Palestinians and to fight with the settlers. Instead of protecting the settlers and giving them security and hug them because they are the soul of the earth, they are the people who are protecting us, he's attacking the settlers, he's sending inspectors day and night to run after them. And on the other end, he's promoting cities, roads, infrastructure for the Palestinian. I think that the Prime Minister should call the Defense Minister and tell him, your job is to take care of the security of the settlers and not of the well-being of the Palestinians.
You must be very concerned then about the package of incentives that the Defense Minister is going to present, presumably to U.S. Special Middle East Envoy George Mitchell when he arrives here later this week.
I think we should do on the contrary. We should take benefit from the Palestinians and tell them until Gilad Shalit is not back or until there is no visitations, we do not transfer to you any money whatsoever, no more benefits, no more privilege until you get Gilad Shalit back. And I think what he is doing today, the Defense Minister, is against the platform we were elected. And the government today, we should tell the Prime Minister, we should lead and not Ehud Barak.
And yet the Prime Minister has authorized the Defense Minister to present this package.
I agree with you. That's why when I speak directly to the Prime Minister. And I tell him what I believe. And I think this package, it is a mistake. We have showed goodwill to the Palestinian with the freeze on the building in Judea and Samaria, and we haven't received anything in return. On the contrary, we received more pressure, more demands, and I think this is about time that we're going to finish with the freeze. Prime Minister have promised to me and to the government that by September 26, we continue to build in Judea and Samaria. I am waiting for that date, and I hope that we will see a new era of building all over Eretz Israel.
Knesset member Danny Danon of Likud, thank you for being our guest this evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. In other news, the Egyptian newspaper Al Masrion today reported that Egypt has decided to freeze diplomatic and security contacts with Hamas and deny entry to the group's senior officials. According to the report, the move comes in the wake of the latest Hamas campaign against Cairo, in which the Hamas leadership has stepped up harsh statements against Egypt in the local media. The Egyptian Foreign Ministry has yet to respond to the report. Back home and in environmental news, President Shimon Peres inaugurated one of the world's largest desalination facilities using reverse osmosis. The enormous 1.6 billion shekel plant is located outside the northern coastal city of Hadera. 127 million cubic meters of Mediterranean seawater will be drained by a network of pipes set beneath the beach for processing into 2/3 of the nation's fresh drinking water. Water has been a source of conflict between Israelis, Palestinians, and other neighboring Arab states for decades. A prolonged regional drought in 2000 triggered the push by Israeli officials to build desalination plants. Hadera's is the third of 5 facilities that will line Israel's shores. In other news, air travelers faced further disruption in their travel plans today due to the high density of Iceland's drifting volcanic ash cloud. Europe's 3rd largest cargo airport and 5th largest passenger hub, Schiphol Airport in the Netherlands, was closed this morning, affecting over 500 flights and some 60,000 passengers. This as all Amsterdam-bound flights already in the air were diverted to other airports in France or Germany. And meanwhile, Europe's busiest 2 airports, England's Gatwick and Heathrow terminals, both reopened this morning after yesterday's closures. But restrictions were placed on flights due to the proximity of a dense section of the drifting volcanic ash cloud. In financial news, share prices in the Tel Aviv exchange were mixed today, as was the performance put in by the shekel in foreign currency trading. Here's a look at the late afternoon numbers. And good news from the IBA weather team, which tells us we can expect a further significant drop in temperatures tomorrow. Here's the forecast at home and abroad for the next 24 hours. And that brings us to the end of this broadcast. I'm Erin Viner, and the entire IBA team and I thank you for joining us. Have a great evening, and shalom from Jerusalem.